Virginia Lee Corbin was a child star in the 19 teens who easily became a grown-up star of the silence at the end of the 1920s. But after a successful transition to starring in the Talkies in 1929, she only made a few more films before more or less retiring at the end of 1931. Why? Join me as I investigate. Before I begin, I must thank Tim Lucier, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, of Silence or Golden for his invaluable online biography of Virginia. I look forward to reading his full-length biography of Virginia entitled The Bare-Knees Flapper very soon. It is available to purchase on many sites online. Virginia Lee Corbin was born Virginia Laverne Corbin in 1910 in Arizona to Leon and Frances Corbin. Her father was a pharmacist and her mother was an actress, and according to Lucier, several articles exist that state that Virginia was a child prodigy, talking at age 11 months, yes, and singing, dancing, and crying on command by the time that she was 3. It's no surprise that her mother recognized her talent and put her on the stage, leading to her debut on the stage at the age of 3 in Human Hearts in 1913, which toured for 3 seasons. There are conflicting accounts on how she was discovered for motion pictures, but young Virginia, who had changed her middle name from Laverne to Lee at this point, debuted on the screen in 1916 in a bit part in Let Katie Do It at Triangle at the age of 6, before making her named character debut in By Conscience's Eye at Rex, followed by The Castle of Despair later that year at Universal. She also made short films for Balboa. Although her roles varied in size, Virginia was beginning to attract attention for her considerable talent, and was signed by Fox in late 1916 to begin starring in a series of fairy tale kiddie pictures. They released a significant amount of press about the young Virginia and promoted her as, quote, the youngest emotional star, end quote. Her kiddie picture roles at Fox included playing Princess Regina in Jack and the Beanstalk, which got her raves, and the princess in the surviving Aladdin and the Wonderful Lamp, which got Virginia an entire article devoted to her and her fellow child stars in Photoplay. This article detailed their lives on the set and mentioned the education that they were receiving on the lot at Fox. Virginia was off to a very successful start and was on her way to becoming one of the biggest child stars of the screen. But following her 4 kiddie movie successes at Fox, the studio seemed to no longer know what to do with this talented young actress. She was featured as the younger version of Kathleen O'Connor's character in Ace High in 1918, a film that starred Tom Mix, before starring in the feature-length film Fan Fan later that year. But by 1919, Fox dropped Virginia's contract. In 1920, she had a substantial role as H.B. Warner's daughter in The White Dove at FBO. Despite this role, Virginia took 3 years off from the movies. Perhaps she returned to the vaudeville stage where she had found success as a child intermittently during the 19-teens, but particularly after her kiddie movie appearances at Fox. In December of 1923, Virginia starred alongside Anna Q. Nilsson in Enemies of Children, which got a good review in Variety, and according to Lucier, was the only film made at Fisher Productions. Next, the teenage Virginia seems to have begun to freelance and become a sought-after actress to portray young flappers. First, at MGM, she was featured in Wine of Youth in 1924 as a humorous dancing flapper, sharing some scenes with William Haynes and Buster Collier. This film also starred Eleanor Boardman, who Virginia supported again as another flapper in Sinners and Silk that same year, also at MGM. She then had a much more substantial role as another young flapper, Molly, in the Louise Dresser and Ricardo Cortez film The City That Never Sleeps at Paramount, which got her an excellent notice in the New York Times. In 1925, Virginia's career momentum continued and her roles continued to increase in size. She starred with Miss DuPont in 3 Keys, and then was the leading lady in her own star vehicle at FBO, Lilies of the Street, a drama that got her a considerable amount of press, including Motion Picture Magazine, which stated that she ran away with the picture. Virginia then starred with Alice Joyce in Headlines. Next, William Fairbanks in The Handsome Brute, and finally, Strongheart the Dog in North Star. In 1925, her year was so successful that she was named a Wampus Baby Star and had clearly made the transition from child star to teenage leading lady. Her popularity was so large that a poll by the Motion Picture Magazine in December of 1925 named her as the 19th most popular female star in Hollywood. coming in not far behind Marion Davies and Mae McAvoy. Back at Paramount in 1926, she starred with Raymond Griffith and Marion Nixon in the fun Western comedy Hands Up. However, Virginia's career hit another snag that year were all supporting appearances. But as always, Virginia was memorable and gave wonderful performances, particularly with Helene Costello in The Honeymoon Express. However, 1927 saw her return to leading roles again. She first starred with Ben Lyon in The Perfect Sap before starring with Monty Banks in the comedy Play Safe, which saw her performing some very daring stunts on a freight train in the surviving segment of that film that's entitled Chasing Choo-Choos. She then had a major role in No Place to Go, a Mary Astor film, before starring in perhaps her most well-remembered film, Bare Knees, which was released in 1928. Playing a more grown-up version of her previous flapper roles, Virginia starred as Billy, a carefree young woman that shows up to visit her sister, played by Jane Winton, and causes a scandalous sensation with her short skirts. In a spirited, hilarious performance, Virginia demonstrated that she easily had made the transition to becoming a mature leading lady and had a knack for comedy. In many of her scenes, I am reminded of Clara Bow. Virginia seemed to give the same amount of energy to her performance from inside and out like Clara did. Variety praised her work, but recognized that she was becoming very often typecast as a flapper. Virginia then starred in two more silents in 1928. First, she appeared alongside Mae McAvoy and Frances Lee in The Little Snob, which got all three ladies good mention in Variety. Next, she starred with Vera Reynolds in the drama Jazzland. Both of these roles saw Virginia typecast again as a young flapper. But in 1929, she made her talkie debut, starring with Colleen Moore, Raymond Hackett, and Frederick March in the Warner Brothers musical Footlights and Fools, sadly, which is lost. But it got a good review in the New York Times for all involved. Virginia then took some time off from the movies. In late 1929, she married Chicago stockbroker Theodore Kroll. The couple enjoyed a long trip to England throughout 1930. Returning to Hollywood in 1931, Virginia went back to work, but found her opportunities mixed. Nevertheless, she still managed to give memorable performances in a variety of leading and supporting roles in four films that year. First, she was a hilarious nosy neighbor to Bessie Love, who tries to get some information out of her and her friends, played by Natalie Moorhead and Lena Basquette, in Morals for Women. Next, she starred alongside Tim McCoy in the western Shotgun Pass at Columbia, which was her largest talkie role. She then made a memorable appearance in Forgotten Women as a chorus girl that has no time for foolishness on a movie set. Lastly, she had a brief, but again, memorable appearance in X Marks the Spot, a crime drama that starred Sally Blaine, Lou Cody, Wallace Ford, and Mary Nolan. Virginia played chorus girl Hortense, who has some fun information to give reporter Wallace Ford. Following this film, Virginia took some time off again, this time to start a family with her husband. She gave birth to her first son, Philip, in 1932, and second son, Robert, in 1935. I should mention here that Virginia had been sadly battling not only her own mental illness, but also that of her mother for many years up to this point. The grueling work schedule took its toll on the young Virginia, leading to an apparent breakdown as a young teen in the early 1920s. In the late 1920s, her mother apparently spent all of Virginia's earnings from the movies before making a suicide attempt. Unfortunately, in the 30s, Virginia's domestic happiness was also to be short-lived. Her marriage was often turbulent. When she and Kroll divorced in 1937, there was a very bitter custody battle that attracted a lot of press attention, with Kroll alleging that Virginia had a drinking problem and should not get custody of their children. Sadly, she lost custody of her children. In 1938, she married Charles Jacobson and attempted to start her career over again. According to Lucier, Virginia told an interviewer that she was content to start at the bottom and work her way back up again in the industry, but it was sadly not to be. Virginia only found work as an extra in two movies, Letter of Introduction in 1938 and Adventures in Diamonds in 1940. While I am not sure whether she actually had a drinking problem or not, her health sadly continued to worsen, and by 1942 she was admitted to a hospital in Chicago, suffering from a severe case of tuberculosis. She tragically succumbed to the disease on June 5, 1942. She was just 31 years old. Her young death is one of the biggest tragedies of old Hollywood, as the mental health struggles that she endured were most likely caused by the grueling work schedule that she had to do at such a young age that essentially took her childhood away from her and then awkwardly thrust her into the limelight. Not really finding footing as an adult, she tried to make an uneasy marriage work before crumbling under the pressure. I think the real reason that Virginia's stardom had some ups and downs in both the silent and talkie eras was her simple growing up. She found stardom as a young child, but lost it only to find it again as a teenager and then find herself typecast as a fun flapper. When the age of the flapper died out, when the talkies came about, she took some time off to devote to her recent marriage. Returning to the screen as an adult, she found it difficult to find her niche. The studios didn't really know what to do with her either, so they tried her out in a variety of stock characters: nosy neighbors, wisecracking friends, Western heroines. Although Virginia proved equally adept at all of these personas, I think her ability to be such a chameleon hurt her career in the long run, as she was not able to find a talkie niche to call her own that would keep her popular with the public. So she threw in the towel to raise a family and tried to find her happiness there, but as I said before, the trauma that she endured as a child had already really made any chance of her keeping such happiness as an adult small. Her short life ended tragically, and I think it's safe to say that she was one of the real victims of Hollywood. Virginia deserved better. Despite this tragedy, we at least are fortunate enough to have many of Virginia's films to view, so we can still appreciate the talent and sheer joy that she brought to the screen. I suggest checking out Bare Knees and Morals for Women, both available on YouTube. I'd like to end by quoting an obituary that Lucier shared in his biography on Virginia. "It is certainly the misfortune of classic movie fans today that so few of her films survive, and she was taken away from us so young. However, the child/teenager/young lady who can still be seen in those surviving films continues to win hearts of anyone fortunate enough to see them today." Please like and subscribe or follow this account if you want to learn more about the history of silent film stars whose stardom lasted only briefly in the talkies. Up next, join me as I cover the silent talkie career of Helene Costello. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a great rest of your week.